My name is Evan Rutter. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Alumni and Parent Engagement at CMC, and it's a thrill to have all of you with us today as we unveil our first archival exhibit of the 75th anniversary of CMC and our second archival exhibit overall. We have with us today John Faranda, class of 79, our Vice President and Ambassador at Large, and Sean Stanley. Sean is the CMC Archivist. He's been with us for about 2 years, putting together just some incredible historical pieces for us, collecting, organizing the hundreds of boxes and thousands of documents and oral histories. And we're so happy to have Sean with us here to walk us through his exhibit. I did mention that this is the beginning of our 75th anniversary. CMC officially turned 75 on July 1. We'll be celebrating the program all year long, all the way through June 30 of 2022. I hope you've received some mailings. The CMC Magazine special edition for the 75th will be hitting mailboxes in about a week or two, so do keep an eye out for that. We promise to have a lot of special programs, in person, virtual, on campus, hybrid, over the course of the year as well. And with that in mind, I did want to walk everyone through just a few quick things as we explore some of what CMC offers for the 75th anniversary. And John, give me a thumbs up if you see Google right now. Fantastic. So the URL for CMC's 70th anniversary is 75.cmc.edu. You can reach it from the homepage as well. We have an incredibly robust 70th anniversary website that honors our history, the mission of the college, all of your stories and the stories of CMC, the incredible academic work that our faculty are doing to honor our 75th, ways to get involved, and of course, the new CMC supply shop where you can select a number of different items and wear your CMC pride on a shirt or a license plate cover, whatever that may be. So feel free to go to 75.cmc.edu throughout the year. The stories will change. They will keep evolving. We'll have a lot of different things for you to explore on this website. And this website's actually where we start today. So down here, we have the CMC Digital Archives. The first exhibit was Founding of a Men's College. We debuted this back in April during our 75th anniversary countdown. Our second exhibit, which is the first of the 75th, is the early years of CMC. And of course, that's what you are here to see today. So I'm going to click on Visit the Preview. And this is the Cliff Notes version. And if any of you were in college in the last 30 or 40 years, the Cliff Notes were kind of a way to get the overall gist of the program without having to read the entire book. So this is a great way to just kind of explore the highlights of what Sean has put together for this exhibit. But if you want to go and do a deep dive, which is what Sean's going to walk us through today, you'll click on Visit the Archive. And that'll take you right to the digital repository for the CMC Archives, which has a lot of different activities and opportunities to learn and to engage. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. Again, thank you all for being here. And I will turn it over to our archivist, Sean Stanley. Sean?
Thanks, Evan, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this program. It's a great turnout, and I'm excited to share the second exhibit with you all and kind of go over some of the interesting archival finds I've come across in the past couple of years and going through and kind of organizing the collections. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll walk through the exhibit itself. Okay, so as Evan just mentioned, clicking on that link from the 75th page will take you directly to the exhibit page itself. So I thought today I would spend a little time going over some of the history that's included in this second exhibit. This is the second in a series of exhibits that we are curating over the academic year. Each will be focused on a different theme or kind of monumental event in the college's history. So today's exhibit focuses on kind of the early years of CMC, the pace setter class group, some of the early student body, and also some campus growth, campus buildings, and some different, student life and campus traditions that were established during this period. So each exhibit page has kind of an introductory page with an abstract on what you're going to be seeing in the exhibit itself. And we have kind of a landing page image here, image that kind of captures the exhibit in a nutshell. So you can see here we have the 4-year club. This was the selection of the first graduating class of 4-year CMC students. And as you are as we go through this exhibit, I encourage you all to come back and explore these pages on your own, to take a deep dive into some of the history, read through some of the articles at your leisure. And each item that you see within the exhibit can be clicked upon, zoomed in, so you can kind of examine those, take a closer look at those. So we're going to move forward to the first page. Which is a focus on incorporation efforts of CMC. So by the fall of 1946, the Claremont Undergraduate School for Men, as it was known at the time, was open and operational, but there was sort of an air of uncertainty about the institution. If things went well, it might develop into a strong liberal arts kind of business-oriented school, or if not, it could represent kind of like a 5-year experiment and never really take off. So the first thing that kind of came about from this era, Claremont College, as the consortium that was known at the time, decided that there would need to be a $1 million endowment before the school could incorporate. And by December of 46, there was $116,000 in gifts and pledges, but that $1 million mark was still a ways away from incorporation. So that led to Claremont College Managing Director Robert Bernard to help with identifying Marie Rankin Clark as a potential donor to the men's school. Marie Rankin Clark was she was the widow of Chauncey Clark, who himself was a pioneer miner and oil producer in Arizona and California. And Mrs. Clark had an interest in education and many other endeavors that she would like to kind of act as a benefactor for. So with the help of Robert Bernard, Marie Rankin Clark agreed to donate $500,000 in honor of her late husband. Initially, the fund was going to be set up as the Chauncey Clark Fellowship Trust, and these were to be used for educational programs towards the graduate school or the men's school. The funds weren't specifically designated to the men's school at the time, but there was some understanding that they could be used for the new institution. So just moving through the exhibit here. In December of 1946, the Claremont College's Board of Fellows accepted a report which was drafted by Will Clary, who recommended that the men's school be incorporated as a separate college. And at the same time, an advisory council for the men's school was established, sort of with the intention of becoming the board of trustees, if the college was incorporated. After this meeting, Harvey Mudd, one of the Board of Fellows chairmen, still believed that finances for the new institution were inadequate. So it wasn't approved right then and there. But by the spring of 47, Russell Pitzer offered an additional donation of $500,000, which could be used for capital expenditures. And this would be if the school would be named in his honor. Now the Board of Fellows thought this too small of a sum to be, have Pitzer's name attached to the college. So they rejected this offer, but kind of undeterred, Pitzer made a counter offer of $250,000 for an academic building on campus. And he did this on 2 conditions. The first being that the Board of Fellows would assign the Mrs. Clark's bequest exclusively to the School for Men, and also that the Advisory Council would match Pitzer's gift with another $250,000. So this quickly was accepted and kind of picked up steam. Donations began to fall in place, and pretty soon the $1 million mark was in sight. And then major opposition by the Board of Fellows towards incorporation was dropped. And during this period, the property was that CMC would eventually be constructed upon was also transferred over to the new institution. And this was the Bixby Smith property, which lie between 6th and 9th Streets and Amherst and Mills Avenue.
Of course, that's what was fondly known as Story House
Yeah.
to many people. Before you go on, just a quick question. I think it was a big surprise to me that we weren't incorporated, I knew, until spring of 47, but it sounds like it was because a lot of people really weren't sure if CMC would succeed. Like it was almost set up to possibly fail and have everyone kind of roped back into one of the other colleges. That's one thing. And the second thing is we were almost named Pitzer College, which I find very amusing.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, yeah, especially now with Pitzer College being one of the Claremont colleges. But yes, certainly there was some kind of trepidation early on that the college might not take off. Obviously with funding not being in place, there was some hesitancy to move forward with incorporation. But as we'll see, that was all kind of taken care of, and eventually, which led to the articles of incorporation being filed. So with the funding in place, the next kind of area of focus was to determine the name of the new college. Marie Rankin Clark was considered, Clark College was considered as the initial namesake. She declined having the school named in her honor, kind of with the fear and thought that it might discourage other major donations down the line. But she was strongly committed to having the Claremont name included in the college. So that led Robert Bernard and George Benson to recommend the name Claremont Men's College, which was accepted by the Advisory Council. And then on March 28, 1947, Claremont Men's College was officially certified as a nonprofit corporation in the state of California. So we have some of the original documents here that you can go through and explore further. Articles of incorporation, and then some meeting minutes from the first meeting of the incorporators of CMC. And as I mentioned here, just 3 days later on March 30th, the articles of incorporation were approved by the incorporators themselves, and all designated funds, pledges, and property were transferred over to the new entity. So just moving forward, we have the bylaws here, original bylaws as they were drafted on, let's see, March 30th of 47. And these are all PDF documents, so you can go through and scroll and read through the entire documents if you'd like.
They're all pretty dry, Sean, but I love the minutes of the first meeting in which Harvey Mudd was talking about this was the second college to be born in Claremont, and George Benson chimed in, and it's a boy.
Yeah, so there's some of those nice little touches that they are, pretty dry, as you mentioned, John, but there are some nice little bits to pull out as well.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you all to, if you're interested, to come back and kind of explore some of these at your leisure.
Yes.
And then, yeah, this brings us up to the first formal convocation at Claremont Men's College, which was held on May 15th of 1947. It was held in Bridges Auditorium, and it included an address by James Blaisdell, who was kind of the founding father of the group plan of the Claremont colleges. So again, we have some related documents here, articles, the program that you can click on and explore, and James Blaisdell's address as well that you can kind of read through. Oh, and then again, just another article about Marie Rankin Clark here to kind of conclude at the bottom. And that will take us to the next page. So
we don't really realize now how important Mrs. Clark's donation was to getting CMC started.
Yeah,
we know a lot about Don McKenna and R.K. Pitzer, but Mrs. Clark and that bequest in her husband's memory is really key. Yeah, let's move on, Sean.
That's very key. Okay. Yeah, she's kind of a forgotten founder, but yeah, it's important to remember that, she played an integral role in the founding and the incorporation of CMC.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at here, we're taking a look at CMC's early campus before a lot of the permanent buildings were constructed. Actually, this aerial photo, I think, comes from about 1946, and this was before the campus was even, construction even started on campus. So if you hover over the annotation box here, you can kind of see the approximate location CMC's future campus, which would extend out to Mills Avenue and eventually beyond, going eastward. But this is just south here of Scripps College.
Yeah, there's a better
Scripps
picture further down, I think.
Yeah, and we'll go through that. So initially, Story House was the only permanent building on campus and served as, it was kind of a multi-use functionality, served as dormitory, commons, and was also kind of a central point of identity for the young campus. So we have some nice photographs here, kind of a press release talking about Story House. And yeah, again, some nice interior shots of Story House. Like, you know, food service line here, picture of the dining room, and then kind of a fun one of some students having their suit measurements taken. Another group of the early buildings on campus were the veterans units, which were built and available for occupancy in January of '47. These provided some really necessary and desperately needed housing for CMC's early students. So again, we have kind of a collage, or, you know, a selection of photographs here of the early veterans units. And then also temporary classroom and office buildings we can see here.
Of course, it's shocking to the current students to know that much of those veterans housing was used for married student housing, because of course now we don't have married students much anymore.
Yeah, it's important to remember a good majority of the students were returning veterans from the war. So, you know, some were older, some were, you know, returning to school after the war years, and kind of were already, I guess, more mature in their years, you know, being married and such. So yeah, as John mentioned, the married student dorms as well. These were some of the other temporary buildings on campus which supplied classroom and office facilities. One of the buildings was brought over from the Santa Ana Army Air Force Base. And that was actually split up into two separate buildings, which we can see down here. One served as kind of the original library building, and another as the first kind of student recreation center, which earned the nickname the Hub, which would be eventually carried over to the Student Union building at the McKenna Student Union and Auditorium. So again, we can see some of the early buildings. The office and classroom buildings were brought in by George Benson. He was able to acquire these buildings, prefabricated steel buildings, through the Federal Public Housing Authority. They were used for offices and classrooms. So we can see again some of the early classroom photos here, an interior shot. So we will just kind of keep plugging through this exhibit. The next page is a focus on the early 1950s through about, actually through the end of the decade. But we're looking at the campus growth and kind of expansion throughout the 50s. So here's another aerial that shows us some of the early permanent buildings which were constructed. So up at the top, we can see the President's House, Pitzer Hall here, and then moving kind of eastward on campus, we can see the 4 dormitory quad buildings. So we have Applebee Hall, Wolford, Boswell, and Green. And, you can still see some of these dirt roads. And so you kind of get a sense that the campus was still definitely in that growth phase before things were built out. The story of the first residence hall is sort of interesting. It was named kind of for an inadvertent donor, Mrs. Doreen Applebee Harnish. Initially, she had given $75,000 as an endowment to the college. This was in honor of her late husband, Frank Bell Applebee, who was a local newspaper editor and publisher. And this endowment was given to support scholarship students from Thailand. However, President Benson and the Board of Trustees were able to negotiate an agreement with Mrs. Harnish to borrow against these funds to build out the first dormitory, and thus the building was named in her honor, Applebee Hall.
And this is a financing method that Dr. Benson used throughout the early history of the college, was taking money and then kind of borrowing against it to build dorms, investing the college's endowment in our own buildings and dorms, because the dorms had a revenue stream so he could charge students to live in them and get income for the endowment that way.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll see in some of the buildings coming up, we'll see some of those donors' names and kind of where they got their namesake from. So anyways, we just have some photos related to the dorm quadrangle. So this is a construction photo here of Applebee Hall. Again, another press release from the archives and a couple photos. This is the completed North Quad dormitory quadrangle, and then we have a student working in an Applebee Hall dorm room from about 57 or 58. So please do come back and explore some of these photos in detail, because they are nice to kind of zoom in on and pick out details and features. So once the dorms were completed, the next kind of need was for kind of a standalone permanent academic hall and kind of administration building. So Pitzer Hall was completed in September of 1949, and it kind of, it showcased or kind of put CMC on the map, so to speak. It's kind of Monterey style architecture, operated almost as like an architectural link between Pomona and Scripps College. And it, really kind of set the scene for CMC's expansion over the coming decade. So as I mentioned, Pitzer Hall housed classroom and faculty offices. And then there was also an effort when construction was being undertaken to preserve as many of the native trees, or, the trees that were growing in the area as possible. So we see some of these, not native, but, the old eucalyptus trees that had been growing on the property for some time, just to, to keep some of this, campus beautification efforts going. So moving forward, the next large building project was McKenna Auditorium and Student Union. After 1950, there was still several needs, but one of the pressing issues was the fact that students needed a kind of an auditorium and student lounge where they could sort of hang out in between classes. So after a series of delays and kind of augmented design plans, Donald McKenna enlisted his family to help finance a 600-seat facility. And this would be named in his honor. A.G. McKenna was his father's name. And the Mothers Club kind of support group helped with fundraise for the construction of the attached student lounge, which was initially dedicated in '53 as the McKenna Auditorium and Student Fountain. Later would be known as the Student Union, and the hub nickname would be carried over from the original building on campus. So we just see a kind of a photo of some of the students walking in front of the building here. Pitzer Hall South came next. It was named in honor of trustee Russell Pitzer. It was kind of built as a kind of an annex to Pitzer Hall itself, two-story annex, and included additional classrooms and faculty offices. So we see some students, there's an outdoor class being conducted outside of Pitzer Hall South here. And then I did want to mention, this was a kind of a major part of the early kind of 50s, late 40s and early 50s, was a student and faculty effort for campus beautification endeavors and projects. One of them was known as, an early one was known as Operation Rockpile, which saw students and faculty clearing rocks and debris from campus for upcoming construction projects. We can also see some landscaping efforts here, but it was definitely a group effort, and everyone kind of pitched in to help build out the campus early on. And I'll just go quickly here. We have another aerial photo, and this is kind of in contrast to the one we saw previously. This is from, I think, 57 or 58. So it shows the growth that the campus experienced and, over a relatively short amount of time. Again, we see the President's House, Pitzer Hall, but we see some of these new buildings and some of the 10th anniversary buildings that we'll cover in just a few minutes. But Pitzer Hall South here, Pitzer North, McKenna Auditorium, the 4 dormitory buildings up at the top here. We have the original Story House, Collins Hall.
So I think it's interesting, Sean, for those of us who only knew the campus after Story House was torn down. to see how close it was to Collins, and that kind of the backyard of Story House definitely was Applebee dorm. You know, we're used to Story House being the little building where that parking lot is, you know, next to Beckett now, but it was built right up against Collins Dining Hall.
Yeah, it was definitely right in its kind of backyard there.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it does give you, hopefully, you know, a sense of, you know, the campus growth and, you know, just how much things have developed over the past, you know, decades, where it's kind of humbling to think, you know, where it started from this small core and then just expanded out. Anyways, yeah, I'll kind of go through. I'll touch upon the 10th anniversary buildings a little bit. We will also be having an upcoming exhibit that focuses strictly on campus buildings and kind of growth over the years. So I want you to stay tuned for that, and we'll have some more details on buildings and things once that launches. But Baxter Science Center kind of kicked off the 10th anniversary building program in 1955. This was a joint facility that was shared by CMC and Scripps College for science courses. Collins Dining Hall was built and opened in the fall of 1957, and this was the first kind of standalone dining hall for students. Beckett Hall was CMC's 5th dormitory, which was opened in 1957. This was named in honor of Mr. and Mrs. Garner Beckett, original chairman. Mr. Beckett was the original chairman of the Board of Trustees. We have Pitzer Hall North, you can see here. Again, office and classroom space, but it also held classes for Harvey Mudd College while Harvey Mudd could, you know, sort of developed its own campus and identity. And then a couple additional buildings, CMC Bookstore. This is no longer on campus, but it was constructed between McKenna Auditorium and Wolford Hall, and it was operated by the Associated Students. And then the gymnasium building, which you know, served as a gym for CMC and Harvey Mudd at athletics. And this was built and was ready for use by fall of 1957. Eventually a field and pool house were added to the complex, and it was renamed in honor of late professor and basketball coach Ted Ducey as Ducey Gymnasium in 1974. So we also are in the exhibit are taking a look at some of the early faculty members, you know, just touching upon some of the early curriculum. So I did want to mention a few of these notable professors. President Benson did a great job in, you know, bringing in a lot of these notable professors from across the country, bringing them to Claremont to teach at CMC. Some of these included Jacob Anton de Haas, can be seen here. From the Harvard Graduate School of Business. Orm Phelps came from the University of Chicago. Gottfried Mann came from Heidelberg University. Alice Vandermeulen actually joined, and if you saw our previous exhibit, we touched upon some of the early faculty members, but Alice joined her husband Daniel on the faculty, and also included a young John Atherton, who would go on to become Pitzer College's founding president. So there was, you know, definitely a kind of growing sophistication of the faculty early on. There's definitely, and also a definite emphasis on, you know, a strong economics department early on in with this faculty. I did want to touch upon this note. So in 1950, with the outbreak of the Korean War, President Benson did fear that there would be a drop in enrollment, you know, if students had to drop out to serve in the armed forces or National Guard, what have you. So he was, you know, very, you know, fearful of that, you know, enrollment might drop to a level that would be unsustainable for the college going forward. So as you can see some of the figures here, September 1950 class is scheduled for about 330 to 350 students. That dropped down to 311. It dropped down to 295 students for the second semester. So there was definitely a mood of panic in the early 50s. President Benson warned some of the junior faculty members that, you know, their positions might not be secure. And So kind of making plans in the, in the worst case scenario. But fortunately, the draft that Benson kind of predicted never really materialized. And in 1951 and 52, the first semester averaged 282 students, and that climbed back up to 326 the following academic year, which was the last of the Korean War. And with the end of the war, disaster was kind of averted, and CMC was able to kind of maintain its focus on, building out its institution and curriculum, so that, the disaster that was thought of in the early 1950s was really averted, fortunately.
Yeah, I think looking back, we really see this as kind of the turning point that CMC went from being a kind of an unstable, questionable institution that might have to get folded back into the Claremont College, and after the Korean War really, took off as its own institution. And obviously the fundraising sure helped with that. And Dr. Benson was a great fundraiser.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's keep moving because we still have a lot to cover, Sean.
I do want to move quickly through this because I want to save some time for some questions and things at the end. So I'll let you all explore this kind of at your leisure. We just have some photographs from early campus, classroom life and campus shots. And I've digitized some of the early brochures that kind of outline CMC's early curriculum and what they're offering in terms of courses of study. So please do feel free to come back and explore these. I did want to mention commencement, 1948's commencement. This was kind of the inaugural commencement ceremony, which saw the first CMC students receive their diplomas and degrees. So Peter Manfu Yu was actually the first CMC student to earn his degree. He earned this in February of 1948. He was a transfer student from University of Hong Kong, and he completed his 2 years of work in 3 semesters. So, very, dedicated student and wanted to finish things up quickly. I know he was married and had a wife and wanted to return to China, where he had a job lined up with his father's merchant banking business. So please do come back and explore some of these nice articles. We have the original commencement brochure that you can take a look through. And then also some of these early yearbook photos of the first 8 graduating students.
Wow. It's like the CMC founders right there.
John, there was an earlier question from John McDowell about whether any of the pace setters were still with us. And I replied, yeah, there are some pace setters still with us, but any of those first graduates, those 8, are any of them still with us?
Well, we
I
just
didn't recognize.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I'll go back and look quickly.
Yeah. I didn't mean to throw us off, but I think there was some interest out there. So anyway, sorry, Sean, go ahead.
Okay. So this will be the last page of the exhibit. And here we're taking a look at residential life, kind of the Joe College era as it came to be known. This was largely the class after 1953, after the Korean War, where it kind of ushered in a kind of a carefree generation after the war years. And, college students were wanting to make the most of their kind of college experience. So we have a kind of funny, just a caricature staged photograph here of a typical CMC student from the era, kind of mixing, a focus on studying with, outside endeavors and socializing and different activities going on campus. The AIR yearbook was established in 1947. This is something that continued on over the decades. This was kind of the inside cover image of the inaugural yearbook here. And also student publications were established early on. So the student newspaper, The Analyst, was established, I believe, 1947-48 for that academic year. There was prior to that, there was the CMC memo, but it wasn't kind of the same quality as The Analyst. This was, more of a print quality, and really kind of set the bar high for upcoming student newspapers. Yes, John.
Mike Sutton and I were amused to see in that article that they called the stag Stan Stag. We didn't realize that the stag had a first name before this.
Yeah, I did like this image, so I wanted to include it. It's a funny shot here. Also big during the era were kind of the college dances, which kind of became the main kind of social function, especially between CMC and Scripps students. So we have some nice photos and an invitation to the Starlight Ball, which was one of the main events. Another kind of crowning of the Queen on the court of the Starlight Ball here. And then this is an image from one of the early yearbooks. Senior class is actually building out the dance patio here on campus. That was kind of their gift to the incoming students. There was a lot of off-campus activities as well. So here's just one example, winter weekend, which took place up at Big Bear. A weekend of kind of winter mountain sports, skiing, etc. And I did want to mention some of the clubs and organizations from the early campus. So ROTC, was very important, or is very important to CMC's history. I think I did mention here that in fall of 1940, or actually 49, 71 of CMC's undergraduates, that was nearly 1/5 of the student body were enrolled in the ROTC program. And we will have an upcoming exhibit that focuses just on the history of the ROTC program and some of CMC's veteran students. So please do check back in for that. In addition, we'll also have an upcoming exhibit that focuses just on the athletics program and CMS athletics. But I did want to mention that, at this period, Pomona and Claremont athletics was kind of a combination where CMC students participated in varsity sports under Pomona College. This era kind of ended in 1958, and that's when CMC formed its partnership with Harvey Mudd, which would eventually become CMC HMC Stags for the academic, the fall of 1959 for that academic year. The Sit-ins Club was a coeducational drama club between Scripps and CMC, which was a popular group on campus. Also, a radio station was established, KCMC. So you can see this is another yearbook shot of some of the disc jockeys there.
Sean, John McDowell is claiming to be one of the DJs in the chat here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just so everyone knows, I used to call it Radio North Quad because I lived in South Quad and it wasn't strong enough to listen to in South
really?
Quad. Yeah.
How funny. Here, I'll zoom in quickly on this photo, and John, you can point out which one. Let's see, it might be labeled here. I know we have.
I think these are long before John McDowell got there.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, cool.
I was thinking he was included in the photo.
No.
Yeah, and then I've included just a couple images of some of there's a couple social clubs on campus, Knickerbockers and the Tortuga-Tears of Prado Dam. So you can read about kind of their background a little bit here. The Mothers Club was a very important kind of fundraising vehicle for CMC. Mothers Club would host teas and events, and definitely kind of provided that element of social cachet and notoriety for the college, beyond Claremont's borders.
Three of these four groups are still incredibly active. The Tortuga-Tears meet frequently with their scholarship recipient and still contribute philanthropically to their fund. The Mothers Club is now the Parent Network. I know Nicole Heath is here, our Parent Network board president. And of course, the CMC Alumni Association, which all alumni are a part of, has hundreds of programs on and off campus every year. So Knickerbockers are still with us, of course, but John, I'm not sure, are Knickerbockers as active as some of the other groups?
Well, we'll have to ask if any Knickerbockers know of anything, but I think they mostly live in memory now.
Mm.
But we have a lot of people here. You could enter something in the chat if you're a Knickerbocker and know about it, but because I know we do have things to get on to here.
I think maybe we'll wrap up here and maybe take some Q&A. I did want to point out, some of you might remember Stinky's Diner. I know this was a staple on campus for or off campus, as a kind of a student hangout for hamburgers and go listen to the jukebox and everything. And again, just some kind of interesting campus recreation shots here.
Part of the 75th anniversary on campus is the Dean of Students Office is going to recreate Stinky's Diner in Collins Dining Hall. So if anyone has an old Stinky's menu handy, let us know. We want to recreate all the favorites.
Yeah, we've been kind of trying to piece together menu items from some of the images. So we know it's like a hamburger joint and kind of a diner. So yeah, certainly if you have a menu handy, we would love to see that. Yeah, and just wrapping up with a toast to CMC, one of the campus songs. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing here. I thought we could, open it up to questions.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I think that this is a great overview of the archive, and I just wonder, as you think about it, what's missing that you can't get your hand on?
So what I would love to, or what I'd love to see is kind of some more of these early event ephemera items. So it could be photographs of events, brochures, ticket stubs, posters, any of that. I'd love to add to the archives and kind of build out some of those collections. I'm also creating a dedicated kind of textiles and ephemera collection. So that could be pennants or varsity sweaters, Letterman's jackets, anything like that. So yeah, I did want to mention, if your family members have any of these materials that you maybe don't know what to do with or looking for kind of a permanent home, please do reach out to me and we can get that kind of squared away for you. And I
know you are interested in input as well. Brian Benson, George Benson's son, is on the chat with us today, and I know after the last one, he sent a little correction about his mom's degrees that you added to the archive, and it's now correct. So certainly if someone sees something, let us know, and we can put your email address in the chat, but you can also find it on the website. I know that we certainly want to open it up to people. You can go to the reactions button and raise your hand if you'd like to raise your hand, or you could put something in the chat. Or if you just wave your arms, we could call on you. We certainly want to, I see Robert Johnson.
Robert Johnson, yes.
Yeah, waving his arms. Tell us, what would you like to say, Robert?
Hey, go ahead and unmute yourself, yeah.
Yep. Unmute. And let us know what's going on. There you go, now we've got you.
That was a mistake.
Oh, okay.
He was enthusiastic about the program.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Good. Did it match with your recollection of the era?
As far as it went, yes. Being there was a little more intimate than this, but this is wonderful.
Yes. Yes, I'm sure.
And I only noticed Bob Howard there, who I didn't really know, but I know the name and I know the face. So hello, Bob.
Great. Yes.
We did have, I had a question earlier about Story House.
Yeah.
John or Sean, do you know the year that Story House burned down? And any circumstances around its demise?
I have an article I can look at, but I want to say it was I know it was in the 70s sometime, but I can't remember if it was early or late.
Early 1970s. Oh, there you go. 1969. That's really early. 1970. Oh, yeah, 1969. Yes, and I think the building was, damaged, but still standing and declared uninhabitable. Earlier, I said when it was torn down. I mean, it burned and then was torn down. It was not just torn down. And I think John Pinedo mentioned that he was living right next door to it. Well, here's something from Jeff Mason, summer of '69. Okay. Yeah, it was, I think the wiring in the building was bad. And I believe the investigation showed that the wiring had shorted out and started the fire.
And I think, what I'll do for that buildings exhibit, upcoming exhibit, I have that article that I have digitized, so I'll plug that in there so we can all take a look at that 1969 article where it talks about the raising of Story House.
Great. I'm assuming that will be a part of one of the future exhibits, probably
Yes.
about architecture. So we'll learn a little bit more there. Great. If you want to virtually raise your hand and ask a question or offer a comment, feel free to do so. You can also put a question in the chat if you would like. And if you have a story as well, we are, of course, recording this and we'll incorporate any stories. Peter Forrest looks like he's raising his hand. Peter, why don't you unmute?
Okay, I was just going to say that I started there as a freshman in September of '49, and I was in Applebee Hall, and I could drive my car right up to the front door. There was no landscaping, it was just dirt. And so that gives you an idea of what things were like in September of '49. The other thing I thought I'd mention is that you saw Garner Beckett as chairman of the board. And as a child, growing up in Beverly Hills, Garner Jr., his son, and I were good friends. And I would go over to the Beckett family home quite often to play. And so what turned out was when I went to graduate, the graduations in those days were at Scripps because I don't think the campus lent itself to a graduation ceremony. And Garner Beckett was the speaker, and he handed out the diplomas. And Garner Beckett, if any of you knew him, or you saw the picture of him, he was the most severe, formal individual I've ever known. I don't think he ever smiled in his life. And so when I went through the line to get my graduation, he handed me my diploma and he looked up at me and said, "Congratulations, Peter." And it was just the slightest of a smirk on his face. So I thought I had accomplished something by seeing him smirk, at least.
That's great, Peter. Thank you. And I think John Poor, you wanted to offer something.
Yeah, my story is about Story House. Those of you watching who ate there, like we all did in those days in the 50s, mid 50s, and you might remember the name, John, not because you were there, but Mrs. Cook was the cook or in charge of Story House. And Story House had probably the worst food you could ever imagine compared to what they do today. But I have a lot of good memories and bad memories of Story House, but that's where we ate. And it was quite an experience. That's all I have to say about Story House, but others can remember that too.
Great, thank you.
Well,
There we have.
John, this is Peter Forrest again. When I was there and eating in Story House, you're right, the food was abominable, but there was a period of time when a new food service person came in and all we had were steak and lobster for dinner. And the school was going broke in the process and they got rid of her pretty fast. But there was a period there where you couldn't beat the food.
Wow.
I wasn't there for that. Great place to have food fights. That's the last of it.
Now we have Richard Peterson who raised his hand. Richard, you're next.
It's two stories. One was of the food from Stern Hall, I believe it was called. We got food poisoning from mayonnaise that went bad. And there appeared a sign on the door of our dormitory. I was in Green Hall. Flush hard. It's a long way to Stern Hall. The other one is from the Story House. Was where I used to study at night until early hours of the morning, which it is here in Holland, where I'm speaking from. And I was working my way through Claremont without support or subsidy from scholarships. And to supplement my earnings, every night when everybody else had left, I'd go around the seats, the benches in Story House, reach down between the seats and fish out, usually $4 or $5 in change that had fallen out of fellas' pockets while they had been studying. That's my anecdote.
Good story.
Very good. It looked like Peter Keaty wanted to join in. Peter, did you have something you wanted to offer? Just have to unmute yourself. I'm glad you could join us. Peter? Oh, maybe not.
Harry Fay is unmuted. Harry, did you want to say anything?
I've got a note.
Okay.
Go ahead, Homer.
Yeah, I was editor of the IR and worked on all those years. I was there from 51, 52 to 55. But I've got a story about one of the some of the professors. They were one of the most memorable parts of that education. And one day I was in Anton DeHaas's class, and Anton was pretty casual, and although he had a big rep, and I even took a picture of him once for the IR with paper strewn down the steps, you know, like he was going to put A's for the stuff that landed on the first step and so on down. Well, he said, you know, Gandhi went through life with just a bed sheet and a safety pin. Okay, so now I go into Orm Phelps' class, and Orm's loved the fact that he was the toughest teacher in the school, the toughest professor. He would never not want anybody to think he wasn't by far the hardest grader, etc. So he was talking about, he said, you know, everybody's materialistic. Nobody really is other than that. Everything is based on money. And I was piped up just having heard DeHaas say something different. And I said, what about Gandhi? And he said, he's dead.
Thanks, Homer. Douglas Wood, unmuted. Douglas, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, no, I just was sitting watching the whole thing and enjoying it.
Oh, great. Thank you. I saw Bob Howard. I think Bob wanted to add something. Unmute yourself, Bob. We'll hear you.
Yes.
Can you get it, Bob? Oh, it was Bob Howard. Yes. I thought was saying hi, but maybe not. And Peter Keady's waving at me. And Sherm, yes, Sherm, just unmute yourself and chime in, please.
We're unmuted now.
Yes, Peter.
Say, as I look here at the year 2021, we're talking about the early years of the college and the most fundamental and sound years of all the men that we met with each other and shared hamburgers at Stinky's or played football. And then we remember people throwing weights down the halls. I remember Mike Forrest, there's a name out of the past that I hadn't seen. And it was a great experience. And the comradeship is still going on. I spoke to two of my classmates today, and we're having a B.B. Gross, a graduate from Pomona, is having a memorial for her husband who passed away this coming Saturday.
Yes. I saw Bob Emmett's widow this morning and showed her the photograph from the archive with Bob and his classmates there. So yeah, very, very much still alive and influencing CMC. So thank you.
Yeah, John Devereaux and Bernie Marshall and Don Samus were all great men.
Yes.
And I remember some of the old timers, Tom Clare. And then I remember, of course, our first off-campus reunion, because that wasn't forbidden, but we had a great time. And we're thinking of trying to reorganize another one now. All right?
Great.
Great collaboration and a great school. And my granddaughter is going there this fall. She couldn't go there last year because she couldn't afford it. She has to pay her own tuition. I tried to get her a scholarship, they wouldn't give her one. She made over $100,000 last year.
Good for her. Well, it'd be nice to have her back, and all the students, will be back on campus starting next month. We're really looking forward to reopening. Bob Howard, you're unmuted now if you'd like to say something.
Oh yeah, hey, great to see everybody. A couple of things have come to mind as I see old friends, and one was my first day at Claremont. And the folks brought me out, and so we were sort of walking through the place, and my dad, who'd gone to Harvard Business School, looked around and he said, "Bob," he said, "there's a guy over there I think I recognize." And it turned out to be Anton de Haas. And it was sort of a great moment as we were talking about. And then I lived in Story House. I was on scholarship, but I had to work in order to do it. And so I lived in Story House and worked for Judith Cook for I think 2 years. That was a great experience to live in that old place. We had a lot of great things happen, and we talked about the vets. The Story House guys and the vets formed a team, and we won almost everything that we could win in those days. So that was fun.
Sounds great.
It's great to see everybody.
Yes, Bob Johnson. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say something about Story House. The whole experience had nothing to do with the food. Nobody even thought about the food. It was just a really cool place. And I had something to say about Owen Phelps. Yeah, he was tough. But did anybody take Abel's statistics class?
And also your music.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Cheers.
Well, it is 5:01 p.m. I know we promised the program would be an hour, so I'm gonna pause and say if anybody would like to depart, feel free to do so. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you next month for a program about CMC becoming a co-educational institution in the 70s and beyond. Should be very fun. But if you'd like to stay, we do encourage you to stay and have some more conversation and share some thoughts. Once again, a big thank you to everyone for their time. Thanks for joining us to celebrate CMC's 75th anniversary today and over the next 11.5 months. And thanks for your tremendous support year over year. CMC would not be the institution it is today without your support and your dedication and your commitments to college and to each other. I do want to ask a question, so feel free to depart if you need to, but to some that are here on my screen here, we had a question from David Murphy. He kind of talked about, thanks Carl, we kind of talked about CMC's rise to prominence and how incredible the college is doing now. Those of you that are here, that were here in the 40s and 50s, did you ever imagine that CMC would consistently be ranked a top 10 institution? I certainly, I've been involved with the CMC for about 20 years now, John a little bit longer, and some of you even longer than that. But what do you think about CMC's progression over time?
Evan, I think I want to have a repeat of 10 years. I've got to dismiss myself.
Okay. Yeah, Peter, we'll have this again. Thank you, Peter.
Great.
Thanks, John.
Yes, thank you. Good to see you. Good
so
to
anyone's thoughts are welcome. Feel free to just chime in.
Hello, this is Doug Wood. Is there anybody else there from the class of 1950?
That's a 50.
I haven't seen anyone from 50.
49? No.
I don't think so.
56.
So
I guess I'm alone.
yes, well, thank you. Thank you. It's your college. Yes, David Murphy was asking.
1950 is
Jim,
here.
yeah,
Here,
Jim Stossel. Jim Stossel's
Yes.
here.
Yep.
Hey, how
I
are
hope
you?
I may be the oldest. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I can't give you any good stories except that in the vet units, we had a lot of fun. Those were great days. In 1949 and 48, and I'm a 3-year CMCer. I didn't do the full 4 years. I got my first year at UCLA just before I went into the service. But I love CMC, and I'm so glad they did what they said they'd do, which was to be one of the top small universities in the country, and they certainly are there.
I know we have Dave Moffett. Thank you. Dave Moffett has his hand raised. Dave.
Yeah, I'd like to know how many of you think you would get into CMC today? Because I know I wouldn't.
No, no.
I had the GI Bill, and that was the main requirement in those days.
I had a couple other small comments. Orm Phelps was one of my favorite. He was the one, I don't know, in the early days, but you had to get whatever paper you wrote on one page. And I think that was so he could reduce the work, but that was good in life to know that you need to write concisely. And in those days, of course, you typed, and you could type with a very short line. But in Story Hall, my memory of that was they had a pool. I'm 60 to 64. They had a pool table in there, and I learned to play pool and billiards. And we'd go after Collins Hall every day to Story Hall and play pool. That was our relaxation. And that billiard and pool talent has gone down the tubes, but it was fun in college.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun. Oh yes, John Tone, you could please unmute yourself. Hi.
Yes, I hadn't heard anything about some of my favorite memories had to do with the CMC sponsored music concerts in Bridges Hall annually, and what happened and what's the history there?
So I think what I'll do, John, because I did come across some of that history. We have an upcoming exhibit for September, which is kind of a look at, again, kind of campus life over the decades. So I think I'll weave some of those materials in, and we can maybe go over some of that history in September, if you can tune back in with us.
Do you remember some of those big band, famous bands coming, John? Who do you remember,
I think,
John?
I think Nat King Cole, that stands out to me. I know there were some others that I wasn't familiar with, but yeah, I know that those were popular early on.
Yes, yes. Good. Yeah, come on, Richard. Yes, Dick, chime on in there.
Yeah, I remember Duke Ellington came to play. And Ella Fitzgerald as well.
Right, right. Yeah. And John Devereaux, who do you remember? Oh, you're muted, John. We can't hear you.
Am I muted?
No.
Oh, try again. Now you're still, there you go. No, we're not hearing you, John. Sorry.
Can you hear me? I would like to second the motion on the food being very below grade at Story House, and a lot of jokes talked about Judith Cook and the food service there. But the thing that I wanted to really comment on was that I lived in Applebee, and we had some really extensive water fights between the various 4 dormitories, and those were quite memorable events.
Oh, I bet. I see James Ewens is here. He's probably eaten a lot of MREs. They probably were worse than the food in Story House in the good old days, though, I bet, right, James?
I don't remember those.
No.
I didn't mind the food in Story House. So I guess I'm not on the team of the people who didn't like it. I ate it all.
Yes, well, I know funds were very short at the time. I'm sure quality food was probably pretty low on the pecking order for Dr. Benson. His key priority always was a great faculty, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Faculty members. And that clearly paid off for CMC in the long run. And you know, David Murphy, I think, is a reason why the college's reputation has grown so much, because of that focus on academic strengths and that community feeling with students and their faculty members engaged in real world issues. Really made a mark for CMC. Yeah. What else as we continue our evening chat? Whoops. Oh, someone. That was an odd sound. Wow. Honor. Oh, if that, whoever that is, can't hear you.
Oh, yeah. Homer, I think there's something wrong with with your microphone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yes, Joe Schreiber. Hi. Hi, Joe. Good. You're muted, Joe. You have
I'm not muted now. Okay. Your comments about Dr. Benson brought back some conversations that I'd had with him regarding his travel to raise money. He and Donald McKenna would ride the red cars into LA and meet with donors and be very successful. And then the second thought I had about Dr. Benson, on his 80th birthday, Diane and I attended that party in 1988, I believe it was. And we each received 2 oak trees that were about this tall.
Yes.
I planted those 2 trees, and now they're close to 40 feet tall in our backyard.
Wow. Great. Yeah, that was a fun party, and we planted an oak tree on campus to memorialize Dr. Benson. And Homer, your microphone is not working, so I have to keep you muted, or we just hear a bunch of gibberish. I'm sorry, something's wrong.
Okay, go.
Something's wrong.
Come
Yeah,
on.
John Devereaux, I can see you raising your hand, but we can't hear you, John. But Bob Johnson, no. Homer, you sound like a chipmunk, I'm sorry to say. But Bob Johnson, go ahead.
Okay, well, it's just another music story. And I don't think this is at our auditorium, but I was at a concert at Pomona in '55 when Miles Davis came. And it was a roaring success, except he was about 40 minutes late. And at the end of the concert, when it came time to pay him, which is done in cash on the spot, it turned out to be like $50 or $100 more than the agreed upon sum. And the reason was he was late because he got a speeding ticket on the way down, and we had to pay for the ticket. Okay, that's my story.
Well, I thought we were going to talk about Carmina Burana. I'm sorry.
Did you perform in Carmina Burana?
Yes.
Yes, I did. And that was
yeah, that's a great staple. The concert choir is still about every 5 years they perform it. It's a
wow.
really piece.
Well, it was so cool because what we did was we did in conjunction with girls from a college called Mount Sacramento.
Mount San Antonio College. It's
yeah, San Antonio Women's
yes.
College, yeah. And we would do our side our week, and they do their side, and then we get together on a Friday and get it together. And then we had one practice together for the whole time, did the thing. I still have Carmina Burana as one of my prized possessions. And it was probably the best thing I ever did at CMC. It was great.
Oh, yeah, great, great. Okay, John, yes, I see you, but we can't hear you, John. Why don't you could type something in the chat and I'll read it to everyone if you like.
I'll just say, hello, John Devereaux.
Yes, I saw John earlier this week. We said farewell to a past president of the Alumni Association, Bill Barrington. So I was with John for that scattering of his ashes.
Oh.
But it's good to, so good to get together with all of you and to have these memories. And thank you so much, Sean, for organizing the archive. And I do hope you'll all take a chance to go back and look and read some of those documents, and especially to get in touch with Sean to offer your photos or thoughts or memorabilia that we could add to the archive. It's important for us to remember CMC's history and find a good way to honor Dr. Benson and the founding trustees and faculty, and of course the early students like so many of you on this call now. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I've really enjoyed hearing your stories and memories. And so thank you for attending, and I hope to see you in the future as well.